Alright, so magandang araw sa ating lahat, and then nandito na tayo ngayon sa ating lesson for third grading period. Ang bilis, no? Sobrang bilis lang. And then suddenly medyo mahaba yung mga lessons natin for third grading period up until fourth grading period, no? Medyo maikli lang yung mga previous lessons natin. But as of this moment, no? Diretso na tayo sa mga topics related sa dito sa grading period natin, which focuses all about the higher concepts ng biology, no? And then suddenly mag-focus muna tayo sa first lesson natin for third grading period, which is nervous system. At alam naman natin na hindi naman tayo nagmamadali, kaya atin ang simulan. Okay, so nervous system, it is the major controlling, regulatory, and communicating system in the body. It is the center of all mental activity, including thought, learning, and memory. Now, these functions are to control of body's internal environment to maintain homeostasis, like regulation of body temperature, programming of spinal cord, reflexes like stretch reflex, memory, learning, and voluntary control of movement. Alam ko na sabi ko na to last time, but I just want to remind you na kapag pinag-aaralan natin ng mga organ systems, no, or kung gusto natin pag-aralan pa lalo in the field of anatomy and physiology, we must encounter that each of the organ system may importante, no? Lahat po yan importante. At kapag nawala yung isa dyan, at kapag hindi nag-function yung isang organ system dyan, magkakaproblema yung ilan or yung iba, no? Sa mga yung iba sa mga organ systems natin. Lahat yan importante. Walang superiority dito. Lahat sila pantay-pantay at lahat sila nagfa-function sa bawat isa, no? And then the nervous system controls the activity of the different organ systems. The basic unit of nervous system is called neuron or nerve cell. These nerve cells send signals called nerve impulses, which help them coordinate with other nerve cells or other parts of the body. These nerve cells are organized as nervous tissues to form organs such as the nerve, spinal cord, and the brain. The structure of neuron, no? But bago natin pag-usapan ng structure ng neuron, I just want to describe the neuron, no? So a neuron is the structural unit of the nervous system. It is mainly for transmission of nerve impulses, and the neurons allow control and coordinate all throughout the body by the way of neural circuits, similar to how electricity is transmitted in order to understand the coordinating function of this cell. So meron tayong iba't ibang mga parte ng structure ng neurons, just like yung cell body. It is the main processing center of the cell or the nerve cell, to become more specific. Dendrites, notice branching extension of the cell body that conduct nerve impulses towards the cell body. Then axon is a single branch in most neurons, which conducts nerve impulses away from the cell body. And then axon consists of myelin sheath and then neurolima, which ang function nila is para maging covering na mismong entire neuron, structure ng neuron. So ayan po yung structure na nabanggit natin. Then proceed na tayo sa nerve. And then yung nerve, it is a bundle of nerve fibers or axons that transmits nerve impulses. It can be either be non-medulated. Kapag sinabi natin non-medulated, they are unmyelinated, no? And then medulated, ibig sabihin ng myelinated, no? The unmyelinated nerve fiber is without a myelin sheath or shield, no? While a myelinated nerve fiber is a nerve with myelin sheath. Okay, so myelin sheath is an adipose or adipose tissue or fatty tissues covering of a nerve. It is constricted at intervals along the nerve. These constrictions are called nodes of Ranvier. Yun yung tawag sa kanya. It is at these areas where transmission of impulses occur, thus increasing the speed of transmission 100-fold. Impulse transmission, terminal end fibers are located at the end of the axons and they transmit impulses leaving the neuron across a synapse to the next neuron. Meron tayong tatlong types ng neuron. They are the efferent or motor neurons. It conveys information from the CNS. Ano yung CNS? They are the central nervous system. Dadaanan natin siya sa mga susunod na slide to muscles and glands. Then yung afferent or sensory neurons, they carry information from sensory receptors to the central nervous system, and then interneurons, they're the carrier and then processor of sensory information. No? Now, makikita natin doon sa portion na sa single piece or single unit ng spinal cord. No? Which is yung spinal cord, isa siyang example ng CNS. Isa siya sa part ng CNS, pero mamaya natin siya tatalakayan. In terms of neuroglia, it support, protect, connect, and remove debris from the nervous system. They are the types of neuroglial cells. They are astrocytes, oligodendroglia, and then microglia. Then nerve impulse. This is an electrochemical signal that is activated by a stimulus and is transmitted from one neuron to another until it reaches a tissue or organ that will elicit an appropriate response to the stimulus. No? So yung stimulus at yung object yung object ay isang bagay na maaari natin nakita or na-encounter natin or na na-encounter natin, and then yung response, ito yung magiging reaction natin pagdating dun sa isang situation or scenario. Just like for example, yung stimulus di pala dun, no? Sa isang scenario, no, merong isang aso, and then suddenly gusto niya ng puto, no? Trap niya lang ng puto, or wag na lang puto, yung dog food, no? Yung aso gusto niya ng dog food, ayan, para mas malinaw, and then nagugutom siya, and then suddenly yung magiging stimulus dito is yung pagkain, no? And then yung response, ito yung magiging reaction ng aso, which is magdudrol, maglalaway, or suddenly ipapakita niya yung reaction niya na nagugutom. Alam ko yung example na ito is pwede siyang may apply sa classical conditioning kay Ivan Pavlov, no? Kung sino yung pwedeng makapag-explain through comment section, okay? So I will appreciate that, no? So next naman po, sa next part, no, it is the flow of ions through the membranes of neurons, particularly the nerve fibers. It travels as fast as the speed of electricity. Neurons are not attached with each other. There are gaps or spaces in between them. A synapse is made up of 3 parts. This figure shows a synapse, which is an essential structure needed for the transmission of impulses. The presynaptic unit is the knob-like tip of each branch of the terminal ends of an axon. The knob-like structure or synaptic knob, the inside of these structures, medyo nahiwalay lang yung S, structures continuous, no, with the cytoplasm of an axon and contains cytoplasmic content abundant with mitochondria and vesicles known as synaptic vesicles. These vesicles contains chemical substances called neurotransmitters that are needed to stimulate the next adjacent neuron. An example of neurotransmitters are acetylcholine, which are the excitatory in nature, and then gamma aminobutyric acid or GABA, which is the inhibitory effect. Yung inhibitory effect, maraming meaning yan. Pwedeng to prevent, ano pa nga ba yung mga meaning ng inhibit para mas lalo natin maintindihan, no? So kapag sinabi nating inhibit, ang meaning ng inhibit is to hinder, restrain, or prevent some of the action or processes, no? So ayun po yun. And then susunod po dito is the next part of synapse is the synaptic cleft, which is the space or gap between the presynaptic unit and postsynaptic unit. When the presynaptic unit releases the neurotransmitters, they diffuse in the synaptic cleft and are received by the postsynaptic unit. The postsynaptic unit, can either be the dendrites of the adjacent neuron or the plasma membrane of the soma of the next neuron, next neuron, or the cell membranes of the effectors. The synapse serves as a control area for the transmission of impulses. Overstimulation of receptors that is transmitted through the neurons, particularly the nerve fibers, are decreased or ceased at the synapse when there is already exhaustion of neurotransmitters. Thus, the adjacent neuron is not stimulated anymore. Moreover, the kind of neurotransmitter being released determines the kind of response the effectors will elicit. Excitatory neurotransmitters like acetylcholine allows active responses, but GABA, which is an inhibitory substance, allows passive response at all. So, ayun po yun. So, next po, neuronal circuits. It is a special network ng nervous system. And then, example of this circuit is the feedback loop circuit, which is helpful in maintaining the internal balance of the body. In this circuit, a part of the initial output from the neuron is looped back to the initial neuron to produce a different output from the initial output neuron. It's like, for example, a person who suffers from fever, which serves as an initial output for this kind of scenario, in a little while experiences chills and then later perspires or pinagpapawisan. So at the end, the fever goes down. So yung dito sa portion na ito, fever goes down, they will serve as the controlled output in this scenario. So ayan, mas malinaw na po. Example number 2, if you encoded a misspelled word on a text document, a signal, which is usually a red line underlining the misspelled word, shows up to indicate the word is incorrectly encoded. So the encoder has a chance to correct it. Ganun naman talaga kapag may mga red lines doon sa text document. Ibig sabihin nun, parang mali yung spelling nito. So magkaroon kagad tayo ng initiate response na makontrol natin yung makontrol natin yung yung response natin, na i-correct natin yung mali, no? Para hindi tayo mapahiya, no? Then we have two major components of nervous system. Yan, tatandaan natin, no? So all bodily activities, voluntary and involuntary, are controlled by the nervous system. So, meron tayong two major components, just like central nervous system or CNS. They are made up of the brain and spinal cord, nakasasabi ko lang po kanina. And then peripheral nervous system or PNS, made up of all the nerves that lead into and out of the CNS. And then yung CNS or central nervous system, kasasabi ko lang po yung interconnected organs like brain and spinal cords. These organs work together to integrate and coordinate sensory and motor information for the purpose of controlling the various tissues, organs, and organ systems of our body. No, nagkamali ako doon, may quit doon, dapat that yun. It is responsible for the higher neural functions such as memory, learning, and emotion. Meron tayong brain, no? Maraming nagsasabi na ang brain, ito yung pinaka-importanteng organ sa sa katawan po natin. Maybe true, totoo naman, pero tatandaan po natin na lahat ng mga organ system sa ating katawan at lahat ng organs natin, lahat yan importante. Walang superiority dyan. Kailangan ng internal ma-maintain natin yung internal balance at saka external balance sa ating katawan para masustain natin yung characteristic of life na tinatawag natin ng homeostasis. Yun, tandaan natin yun. Lahat yan importante, walang superiority dyan. Lahat sila nagfa-function according to their functions. Yung brain, it weighs about 3 pounds in adults. It contains 75% water and 20% oxygen, and it contains over 100 billion neurons or higit pa dun. Yun nga, may over nga dun. And then controls bodily functions and interactions with the outside world, no? And then meron tayong 4 na parts ng brain. They are cerebrum, the encephalons, brainstem, and cerebellum. Sa brainstem muna tayo, no? So brainstem, they are made up of the midbrain, pons, and medulla oblongata. No? So pag-uusapan natin yan. So midbrain, they involve with visual reflexes. And then yung pons, they are located between the midbrain and the medulla oblongata. Then yung medulla oblongata, they regulate heart and lung functioning, swallowing, coughing, vomiting or pagsusuka, and sneezing. So ayan po. Cerebellum, correct me sa mga pronunciation ko. organ is this part of the brain is an area that coordinates musculoskeletal movement to maintain posture, balance, motor learning, fine movement, coordination, and muscle tone. It is located inferior. No, ano ba yung inferior? At yung down. Inferior to the occipital lobes of the cerebrum. Mamaya ma-encounter natin yung mga lobes na yan. And then yung posterior, ibig sabihin yan back or nasa likuran ng pons and medulla oblongata. Base sa pagkakakita natin kanina po. Ayan po yung cerebellum. And then, in terms of cerebrum, it is located above the cerebellum. It contains two hemispheres with an outer portion called the cerebral cortex. It consists of right brain and then left brain. Right hemisphere and left hemisphere. Right hemisphere and left hemisphere. Ayan, inulit ko po ulit. Kapag sa right brain, mas nagfa-function dito yung art, creativity, yung more on imagination, mga ganun, related sa art, awareness, no? And then, more on creative thinking, no? Yun ang papagana dyan. And then, yung left brain, or left hemisphere, nag-function dito yung logic, or logical reasoning, mathematical, or mas ina-apply natin dito yung critical thinking, no? So, tandaan natin, sa right hemisphere, it is a left-hand control, and then yung left brain function, they are the right hand control. So the two hemispheres are connected by a bridge of nerve fibers that relay information between the two hemispheres called the corpus callosum. Corpus callosum, ayan. The cerebral cortex ay nahati sa apat na lobes. They are the frontal, temporal, occipital, and parietal lobe. So sa frontal lobe, they initiating and control movements of the head and eye muscles coordinated with visual sensations involved in speech and language comprehension, control of emotional behavior, and mental processing. And then, sa temporal lobe, they focuses on the auditory input. The occipital lobe, it focuses on the visual sensory information, and then parietal lobe, it is responsible for touch, pressure, temperature, and kinesthesia, yung kinesthesia, ito yung sense of position and movement of body parts. So, proceed na tayo dito sa diencephalon. So, the encephalon serves as a relay center for sensations like heart rate, blood pressure, temperature control, behavior responses, and digestive functions, water, and electrolyte balance. And then the deep portion of the brain containing thalamus, which is the relay center for sensory impulses from surface receptors to cerebral cortex for crude awareness of sensation. Yung hypothalamus, they regulates of body temperature, feeding activities, concentration, and volume of extracellular fluid, autonomic nervous responses, and endocrine functions. Yung epithalamus, they're there to connect the limbic system to other parts of the brain, include the secretion of melatonin by the pineal gland involved in circadian rhythms and regulation of motor pathways and emotions. And then yung spinal cord, no, they're extended part of the CNS from the medulla oblongata of the brain to the area around the first lobar vertebra in the lower back. Nerves from the peripheral nervous system extend out from the spinal cord, and then they're protected by vertebral column, cerebrospinal fluid, and meninges. Tama ba ako? Correct me if I am wrong sa pronunciation. And then, ayan po yung isang single unit ng spinal cord. Ayan po. And then, next po, meninges, no? So, they have three layers of the membranes that cover the brain and spinal cord. We have three layers of the meninges. They are the dura mater, ito yung outer tough fibrous membrane, no? And then arachnoid mater, they're the middle web-like membrane containing cerebrospinal fluid, kaya medyo nahawig siya as a web-like that because of the arachnids, mga spiders, no? Para siyang kasi mga spiders gumagawa sila ng mga webs, di ba? And then yung pia mater, they're the innermost layer containing several blood vessels. So, ano po siya. And then, yung PNS or peripheral nervous system, it is a collection of peripheral nerves, ganglia, and specialized sensory structures that, as a system, carries sensory and motor information between the CNS and all other organs and tissues of the body. So, meron tayong dalawang major division ng PNS. Just like yung sensory division at saka motor division. And then sa motor division, nahati siya sa somatic nervous system and autonomic nervous system. And then sa autonomic nervous system, meron tayong sympathetic and parasympathetic division. Yun. So, the human peripheral nervous system consists of 12 pairs of cranial nerves and 31 pairs of spinal nerves innervating the entire body. All the spinal nerves and most of the cranial nerves possess both sensory and motor neurons. The sensory division of PNS allows perception of stimuli from the external environment and monitors the status of the internal environment by coordinating the functions of the internal organs. And yung motor division, meron tayong dalawang division just like yung somatic nervous division, which transmits signal to the skeletal muscles in response to the external stimuli, and then yung autonomic division controls and coordinates functions of the organs and help maintain internal balance or homeostasis of the body. In general, the role of sympathetic nervous system is to prepare or allow an organism to respond to emergency situations known as fight or flight system. Parasympathetic nervous system is more on the continuous maintenance of internal balance. Most internal organs are connected and innervated by both divisions. Just like, spinal nerve number 1, olfactory yung kanyang cranial nerves, and then yung functions, they are the sense of smell. No? So, tignan nyo na lamang yung kanilang spinal nerve number, yung cranial nerves na kung ano man yun nandun sa kanila, and then kung ano yung kanilang function. So, ayan na po. Pwede ko na pong ilipat sa susunod. So, ayan. I will give you 5 seconds para makita nyo siya. Okay, so tama na po yan. Okay? So, in human nervous system, most often, if an organ is stimulated by both divisions, they often have an antagonistic effect. Like the sympathetic effect of the heartbeat is to increase the heartbeat in an emergency situations, while the parasympathetic division slows down the heart rate again. No? The autonomic nervous system functions in coordination with the hormonal functions of the endocrine system to regulate many functions of the human body. So, malaki yung, hindi naman sa malaki, may relationship ang nervous system into the endocrine system. Magkasangga din po sila in some other ways. Kaya ito rin po yung nagpapatunay na wala talagang superiority pagdating sa organ systems natin. Lahat po yan ay importante at dapat yan ay nagpa-function para tayo ay normal din na makakilos. No? At magawa natin yung mga dapat natin magawa sa araw-araw. So, ayun lamang po ang nilalaman ng lesson natin para sa oras na ito. And then, kung meron kayong mga questions, clarifications, or concerns, leave a comment below. And then, yun lamang po. Kita-kits po sa susunod na lesson. That's all for today. Goodbye.